Now that we've looked at the players individually, we're going to do a tail of the tape video where we look at the players head to head, we compare their stats, we look at predictions from other top players, and we look at their classical games in recent history. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're going to live stream games 1, 2, and 3, and for every game in the World Championship, I'm going to be posting a game recap either that afternoon or sometimes in the next morning. And those will be 10 to 15 minute recaps of the games. And I'll put links to these websites that I'm showing you in the description below so you can check them out and do a little bit more reading to get hyped for the match. So first we have the chess.com article, Carlsen-Nepomniachtchi predictions. And here we have a nice graphic where they show the tail of the tape. And we can see Carlsen's rating is 2855 in standard, and Nepomniachtchi is 2782. That's a 73-point difference in standard rating. Carlsen's ranked number 1 in the world, and Nepomniachtchi is ranked number 5 in the world. Now, if this 73-point difference holds true in the match, it's going to be a blowout. So I think Nepomniachtchi needs to look for other factors that can give him chances to stay in this match. And we kind of see similar rating differences in Rapid and Blitz as well. So we can see Magnus is number 1 in all 3 categories. Nepomniachtchi is 5th in Rapid and 10th in Blitz. And in Blitz we see a 100-point rating difference. But in recent games, as we've looked at already, Nepomniachtchi can score quite a few wins against Carlsen. So if it comes down to the Rapid tiebreaks or the Blitz tiebreaks, even though Magnus has a higher rating, I think he wants to stick to the 14-game segment where he has the 73-point advantage and try to win during that segment. That would make the most sense for Magnus. So in this prediction article, most of the grandmasters and other personalities pick Magnus to win, but they say it could be closer than people think. So if we look at Vishy Anand, who has experience playing Magnus in the championships, he says Nepo's style is somehow incompatible with Magnus's. And I think what he means here is Magnus has a style where he likes to play very solid positions. He likes to grind for an advantage. Sometimes it looks like the position is completely equal, and Magnus figures out ways to win in the endgame. And Nepomniachtchi has a style that can be very combative. He likes to attack, and he's very strong tactically. But he's also not as consistent as Magnus. So sometimes Nepomniachtchi can go on really good runs and win a bunch of games in a row, and sometimes his games can completely fall apart, whereas Magnus tends to be pretty consistent, and he doesn't lose a lot of games. And then Vishy also says for Magnus it's inevitably getting difficult. It's already his 5th match, so I don't think the fire is burning so hard inside. And that's a possibility too. So for Magnus, he's been at the top for a long time already, and for Nepomniachtchi, he is at his peak right now. He has never been stronger, and I think he'll be really well prepared for this match in hopes of taking down Magnus. So that might take that 73-point gap and shrink it a little bit. And if Nepomniachtchi can win the first game or two out of the decisive games, then I think it's psychologically really hard for Magnus to stay in the match. And that brings us to the next predictions, Vladimir Kramnik, and that's essentially what he says. He says, for the challenger, it's important after the start of the match to get the feeling that you are in and that you are valid. And that's exactly right. I think Nepomniachtchi, if he loses a game or two early, it might become a blowout. I don't see Nepomniachtchi blowing out Magnus, but if he gets wins 1 or 2 against Magnus, it really could go either way, because Magnus is going to have to press extra hard, and it might be going towards positions that Nepomniachtchi is strong in. And then if we look at what the recent 2800 player Alireza Firouzja says, it's going to be a very close match, but probably Magnus is the favorite. And that would kind of line up with what we've seen in the predictions so far. My prediction was around 85% chance for Magnus to win, and actually 84% and 16% for Nepomniachtchi. I think the betting odds are somewhere around 75-25 for Magnus, and it seems like Alireza kind of agrees with that. And coming down to Hans Niemann, I think if Nepo loses 1 game, the match is over, just from him as a player. That's a very interesting take as well. I think this match, it's much more of a psychological match than we've seen with the Karyakin match, the Vishy match, or the Caruana match. I think there's going to be a lot of nerves and a lot of psychology playing into this one. David Howell, who works closely with Magnus, says Magnus is the favorite, but I think it's going to be closer than people think. And I found this one interesting. Amon Hambleton says, I do not believe the second best player in the world is facing Magnus this time around. So last time we had Fabiano Caruana, and it was very clear that he was number 2 in the world, and his rating was essentially tied with Magnus. They were very close in rating, and they were the obvious number 1 and 2. Whereas right now you could argue that Firouzja, maybe Ding Liren, maybe Caruana could all be stronger players than Nepomniachtchi on average. And then here we see another comment. Carlsen will win because he is a genius. Nepo is an extremely strong player, but not a genius. And Yasser Sirwan says, I suspect the match could easily be a blowout for either side. I agree that Magnus could win by a blowout, but I don't think Nepomniachtchi could win by a blowout. Unless he wins 1 or 2 early, Magnus overpresses, and Nepomniachtchi keeps winning. But I really don't see that happening. I think it's going to be very tough for Nepomniachtchi to win more than 1 or maybe 2 games against Magnus. And then this is the most interesting part. Jan Nepomniachtchi also gave a statement. Does he feel ready for the match? Am I supposed to feel ready? But I guess when you prepare for such a major event, you always feel like you could do more. We are doing some insane amount of work, so I hope to be ready enough. And he does have this 4-1 plus score in classical games. And his reply when asked which his favorite victory was over the Norwegian player Magnus, he said, I guess it lies somewhere in the future. Hopefully during this match for Nepo. And this is my favorite one from Magnus. When asked what his biggest advantage is against Nepomniachtchi, he says, my biggest advantage is that I am better at chess. And he also says that Jan is definitely a wild card. So I think there's going to be a lot of drama with this match. It's going to be very interesting to see how things play out early. All right, let's jump over to the next article, and I'll also put a link in the description. This is from the FiveThirtyEight Blog. They do a lot of statistics on sports and politics. And here's a nice history of Magnus's World Championship matches. So we see he played Vichy in 2013 and defended the title in 2014. And in those matches, he had 3 wins to none and 3 wins to 1, with the rest of the games being draws. Against Sergei Karyakin, it was 1-1 in 2016. And Fabiano, no decisive games until the tie breaks. But the interesting thing about this table is all of these players are very strong. They won the candidates to play in the World Championship matches. Magnus has won 7 games in 4 matches. His opponents have only won 2. So that just shows how hard it is to beat Magnus in a World Championship game. And this next chart I like a lot. This shows Nepomniachtchi, who is within a year of Magnus in terms of age, started out quite a bit higher than Magnus back in 2001. So we see a 2240 rating, 2084 for Magnus. And somewhere around 2003, their lines crossed and Magnus became a high-rated player. And you can also see Magnus became a grandmaster a little earlier than Nepomniachtchi. And since then, Magnus has had a really nice rise, and he's stayed at the top. He's been world number 1 this whole time. But if you look at Nepomniachtchi's line, he's actually at his peak, and they have the smallest gap that they've had since Nepomniachtchi became a grandmaster. So Nepomniachtchi is the strongest he's ever been, most likely. He's got the highest rating he's ever had. Magnus has been at this level for a while. So like Vichy said, it'll be interesting to see, does Magnus still have the drive to win this match? Or will Jan Nepomniachtchi, who's on the increase, actually be more motivated to beat Magnus? Next, we'll look at their classical games. So I really like this table as well. We see that in the Under-12 European Championship, Nepomniachtchi won with the white pieces. They played again that year in the World Championship under 12, had a draw. And then in the next decisive game, Nepomniachtchi won under 14 World Championship with white. And Nepomniachtchi beat Magnus in the Tata Steel Group A with the black pieces. So they started out their career 3-0 for Nepomniachtchi. Now, the most interesting one comes in 2017. So they had a few draws, Tal Memorial, Tata Steel, and Sinkfield Cup. But in 2017, when Magnus was already proven to be such a strong player and world number 1 for quite a while, Nepomniachtchi beat him again with the black pieces. And I think this is when people started to talk and say, wow, this matchup really favors Nepomniachtchi on paper. Like, he's got a 4-0 score in decisive games. But then in 2019, Grand Chess Tour in Croatia, Carlsen came back with a win with the black pieces. And in 2019, again, they played in the Sinkfield Cup and had a draw. And in the next 2 games, I'll show you these 2 games briefly. They played in Norway chess after figuring out already that Nepomniachtchi was the challenger. So it's very interesting to see what their strategies were coming into these 2 games. And we're going to look at those next. And then I just also wanted to show the odds here. 84% Carlsen, 9% Nepomniachtchi, with the middle being a tie. So actually, FiveThirtyEight favors Magnus more than my own predictions, which we showed in the article for chess.com earlier in an earlier video. And I think that's because they are using just going straight off the FIDE ratings, and I brought that gap down a little bit closer when I ran my simulations. So now let's look at these last 2 games. This is from Norway Chess. So they played in round number 4. Let me go back to the start. Magnus had the white pieces, and this was a Berlin. And the Berlin is known for being a pretty drawish opening, but it can give white some chances if they have, let's say, a surprise ready for black. But they played this line with the queen trade. That's typical Berlin. And now here you see Magnus plays knight g5. Jan retreats the bishop, h3, bishop e7, and then Magnus puts the knight back on f3. Now, in my opinion, if you look at this game, I don't think Magnus is pressing very hard for a win. I think he's very content to trade pieces and play for the draw. But now look what Jan does. h5, knight e2, knight h4. So Jan is trading off this pair of knights, which will leave the remaining bishop pair against bishop and knight. And now what Jan does next is very interesting as well. He starts pushing his pawns and being the aggressor. So he plays c5 and then g5. So he has these 2 pawns running at white's king with the bishop pair with a rook already on the h file. I think Jan is playing to win this. Even though the Berlin's a solid opening, sometimes it's very hard to play for the win, I think Jan senses that Magnus is playing passive, and he's actually trying to show, like, hey, if you want to play passive, Magnus, I'm going to play for the win here. So Magnus plays f3, and Jan tries to break the position open. He doesn't want a boring game. So now we see a few more trades, and I think at some point here Jan does realize that the winning chances have pretty much evaporated. They were small to begin with. He pressed them a bit, but he's not going to overpress and risk losing. So there's some jacking for position, and then I think right here is kind of the decisive move where Jan just says, okay, I have the bishop pair, but I realize that I can't play for the win. I'm going to allow you to trade off minor pieces with me. And they go into this rook endgame, which is going to be a dead draw at the highest level. Now in the next game, so that was round 4 in Norway chess. The next time they played was, I believe, round 10. Jan has the white pieces now. Oh, and I should also note, if you look at the Senapon loss, in that first game it was 3-3, and in this game it's 7-5. So these guys aren't making any mistakes in these games. It's 0 in accuracy, 0 mistakes, 0 blunders. So here we see e4 by Jan, and Magnus has played e5 and c5 against Nepomniachtchi recently. Now what I like about this game is, instead of going for a typical Roy Lopez, Jan plays the Gioco Piano with d4. These lines are more aggressive, but there are times where black can find an easy way to draw, but I think this particular line, it's actually hard for black to easily just kill off the attack and get a forced draw. So if you look at the resulting structure after these trades, Jan has these two pawns pointing at Magnus's king side. Magnus has the outpost here and a bishop pointing at d4. This is a very dynamic position. I think Jan's actually pressing a bit to see if he can play for the win. And by playing e5, Magnus might have been thinking that this is more of a drawing weapon than playing the Sicilian, because he's had double-edged games in the Sveshnikov. Alright, so after castle, bishop e3, Magnus plays bishop to g4. And here again you see this pawn chain. It's an attacking structure. It points towards the king. This bishop could potentially come back later, point towards the king side. I think there are some potential advantages already for Jan. And the engine's saying like 0.2 advantage, maybe up to 0.6 in this game. So it's nothing huge, but if one side is playing for the win, I think it's Nepomniachtchi. So now here we see Magnus trades off the bishop for the knight. He gives up the bishop pair, and I think it's because he's realizing that he can force a draw. So again, it's Magnus, in my opinion, that's playing for the draw here. Because look at this knight, and look at this bishop. They don't look like good pieces. He's actually going to try to reroute them, like bishop back to c7 maybe, knight to c4. I think in the game the bishop actually ends up going to a5. But Jan has better placed pieces too. So Magnus is giving up the bishop pair without really any compensation. Knight c4, the bishop retreats. Queen g6, look at that. Queen trade offer. Jan avoids the queen trade. Now I think here Stockfish actually said the queen trade might be a little bit stronger, and then you could try, let's say, sink the rook down to e7, play for an advantage this way. But I think Jan was thinking, let's play for more, let's play this out a little bit, and maybe there's some psychology here too. If Jan's playing for the win or for advantages while Magnus is trying to draw, there's a little bit of a psychology angle to that where it says, okay, I'm here to play, you just want to shake hands and get to the next game. So they have a trade, and at this point Jan takes c4, but I don't know if that's necessarily playing for a draw. This could be playing for a potential weakness on c4. So we go a little bit further, bishop a3, h4, potentially an aggressive move here. But now at this point, rook e2, I think Jan realizes that it might be Magnus that's starting to get a slight advantage. Like, if we look at the Stockfish eval here, it's saying minus half a pawn potentially. So I think he kind of bailed on the winning plans and decided to play solid. f3, rook e4. This is kind of just setting up a bit of a fortress, right? Everything's defended. No easy way for Magnus to push his pawns. Bishop b6, bishop e7. Players agreed to a draw. And Stockfish agrees here. He says, Stockfish says the position is 0.0. And there's even a line, rook e5, using the pin on the d pawn. If rook takes, queen takes, it's an advantage for Magnus. So here Jan would have to play like queen e3, and then rook takes, f takes. It's just more trades. This bishop doesn't have a lot of good squares. And, maybe they could have played this out a bit, but Stockfish does seem to like black slightly better. And now it's saying 0.0. So 2 games with almost no mistakes, but in my opinion, Jan was playing for a slight advantage in both games. He was actually trying to get some initiative and maybe play for the win. He wasn't taking any extreme risks, but I find that interesting from a psychology point of view. So I'm really excited to see how the match goes. So if you guys want to follow the match on our channel, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I'll have live streams all 3 days. And so far we have 6 different ChessGoals members lined up to do co-commentary with me. And we're going to be just kind of calling it a watch party. We'll be watching the game live. I'll also show an analysis board. And we're going to be interacting with the YouTube chat the whole time. So you guys can ask questions, throw out suggestions. It's just going to be a good time, and hopefully we all learn something while watching the games. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, and you can even set a reminder on those live streams. They're all posted now, so you can go to our channel, go see those future live streams, and get notified when they start. And yeah, make sure to tell your friends too. If you have friends that want to watch the match, you can come watch on the ChessGoals channel. Oh, one other thing, we have a Black Friday sale going on from now until Sunday, and that's 40% off our opening courses and 60% off our study plans. So that's going through Sunday, and there's links in the description below. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you guys at one of the live streams Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, or in the comments on the game recaps, which I will be doing after every single game from the match. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.